The air on Centauri Prime tasted like metal and decay. Catherine Monroe noticed this first as the hood was ripped from her head. Bright purple lights blinded her momentarily. When her vision cleared, she saw 4 hegemony guards pointing pulse, rifles at her chest. Their gray skin gleamed under the harsh lights of the detention block. "Move, human," the tallest guard growled, prodding her back with his weapon. Catherine shuffled forward, her wrists bound by energy cuffs that bit into her skin. She kept her head down, brown hair falling across her face. To anyone watching, she appeared defeated, just another human spy caught where she shouldn't be. Just as she had planned. The corridor stretched before her, lined with cells containing various alien prisoners. Most cowered as the guards passed. A few hissed or spat. Catherine memorized every turn, every security panel, every vent shaft they passed. 43 steps to the first junction, 18 to the second. Security cameras positioned every 12 feet, 2 guard rotations per cycle. They reached a large circular room where a tall, thin alien waited. His skin was pale blue, and his 4 eyes blinked in sequence rather than together. High Commander Vexler of the Galactic Hegemony. Catherine had studied his file extensively. "So this is the human spy who breached our most secure military installation," Vexler said, his voice oddly musical despite the coldness in his eyes. "Not very impressive." Catherine said nothing. She stood 5'6" with an ordinary build that suggested basic military training, but nothing special. Her face held no distinctive features that would make her memorable. This had always been her greatest weapon. "Your primitive species continues to surprise me with its stubbornness," Vexler continued. "Barely a decade since your planet was brought into the hegemony, and already you test our patience." One of the guards handed Vexler a small device they had taken from Catherine's boot. "This was hidden in her footwear, Commander." Vexler examined the simple data chip. "And what were you hoping to steal with this, human? Our defense codes? Weapon schematics?" He laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Your Earth technology is so backward you probably couldn't even read our data formats." Catherine kept her eyes down, her posture submissive. Inside, she counted the guards, noted the weapons on their belts, watched how the security doors operated. "Take her to Interrogation Cell 5, Vexler ordered. "I want to know who sent her and what she hoped to accomplish before her execution tomorrow." 2 guards grabbed Catherine's arms and dragged her down another corridor. 36 steps, 2 security checkpoints, 1 ventilation duct large enough for a human body. The interrogation room was small and bare except for a metal chair bolted to the floor. They forced Catherine into it and activated restraints that bound her arms and legs. 1 guard smacked her across the face. "That's for Sergeant Cracks. He was on patrol when you breached our perimeter." Catherine's lip split and she tasted blood. She said nothing. The guard hit her again, harder. "Enough," said a new voice from the doorway. A slender alien female entered, her skin a deeper blue than Vexler's. "The commander wants information, not a corpse." The guard stepped back reluctantly. The female approached Catherine, studying her with 3 yellow eyes. "I am Chief Interrogator Nala. You will tell me everything I wish to know, or you will experience pain beyond your species' understanding." Catherine finally spoke, her voice soft and slightly raspy from disuse. "Water, please." Nala smiled, showing teeth like small needles. "Cooperation will earn privileges. Names first. Who sent you?" "Lieutenant Catherine Monroe, Earth Defense Force," Catherine said, keeping her voice weak and frightened. "Service number 77305. "And who ordered you to infiltrate our military base?" Catherine coughed. "Water, please." Nala nodded to one of the guards, who brought a small cup. She held it to Catherine's lips, allowing her a few sips. "Now answer the question." "I was sent by Earth Defense Command," Catherine said, the lie flowing smoothly. "Reconnaissance mission. Standard procedure." Nala frowned. "You expect me to believe Earth would send a single operative, a female no less, on a standard mission, to the heart of hegemony space?" She laughed. "Your species truly is primitive if this is your idea of military intelligence." While Nala spoke, Catherine tested her restraints. Standard hegemony design, Third generation, vulnerable at the power coupling if enough pressure was applied. Not yet. Not time. We're still learning, Catherine said, allowing a note of bitterness to enter her voice. The hegemony didn't exactly give us a choice about joining your empire. Ah, so there is some spirit there after all, Nala said. Good. Breaking spirit is much more satisfying than breaking bodies. She picked up a small silver device from a nearby table. This will make you tell the truth. It also causes excruciating pain if you resist. Catherine tensed, showing fear, for the first time. Not entirely an act. She'd experienced hegemony truth devices before. They were unpleasant. Before Nala could use the device, an alarm blared through the facility. Red lights flashed in the corridor outside. What is happening? Nala demanded. A guard rushed to the door. Security breach in Sector 7. All personnel to battle stations, Nala hissed in frustration. Secure the prisoner and report to command. She pointed at Catherine. Don't think this interruption will save you, human. I'll be back. The guards activated an additional layer of restraints before following Nala out. The door sealed with a heavy thunk. Catherine waited 30 seconds, listening to the fading footsteps and alarms. Then she smiled. Exactly on schedule. She flexed, her right hand dislocating her thumb with a practiced motion that caused barely a wince. The maneuver allowed her to twist her hand enough to reach the hidden lockpick woven into the seam of her prisoner jumpsuit. 20 seconds later, the restraints clicked open. Catherine stood, rolling her shoulders to work out the stiffness. From the ceiling vent came 3 soft taps. She tapped back twice. The vent cover slid aside, and a small metallic sphere dropped into her waiting hand. Lieutenant Paul Martinez's contribution to the mission. The man was a genius with explosives. Catherine placed the sphere against the door's locking mechanism. It adhered instantly, tiny legs digging into the metal as it bypassed the security protocols. The door slid open silently. In the corridor, the alarms continued to wail. Catherine moved like a shadow, keeping to blind spots she had mapped during her entry. She wasn't escaping. She had never been captured to begin with. This was exactly where she needed to be. Somewhere in the facility, her team was creating the diversion they had planned. Lieutenant Martinez with his explosives, Captain Chris Baker with his electronic warfare suite, Sergeant Lisa Ward with her sniper rifle, but none of them knew the full mission. None of them knew who Catherine really was on Earth. In the highest levels of military command, she wasn't known as Lieutenant Monroe. They whispered a different name, one borrowed from old Earth legends about a witch who lived in a house with chicken legs and consumed those who crossed her. They called her Baba Yaga, and now she was loose inside the heart of the hegemony's most secure facility. The hunt had begun. Catherine moved through the shadows of the detention facility like a ghost. The alarms continued to blare, covering the soft sound of her footsteps. Most of the guards had rushed to Sector 7 where her team had triggered the diversion. Exactly as planned. She reached a maintenance junction and quickly pried open the panel. Inside was a small computer terminal. Catherine pulled a thin wire from the hem of her prisoner jumpsuit and connected it to the port. The wire contained a miniature hacking device that began working immediately. Within seconds, the facility schematics appeared on the small screen. Catherine studied the layout, committing it to memory. The central command center was 3 levels up. High Commander Vexlor would be there, coordinating the response to the supposed breach. But that wasn't her target. Not yet. She found what she was looking for on Level 5, the Intelligence Archive. That's where the information she needed would be stored. Catherine disconnected the wire and replaced the panel. She checked the corridor and then moved toward the nearest lift shaft. 2 guards rounded the corner ahead. Catherine pressed herself into a shallow alcove, holding her breath as they passed. "Did you hear what they're saying about the human prisoner?" one guard asked the other. "What about her?" the second guard replied. "Apparently she got through our outer defenses without triggering a single alarm. Took down Sergeant Cracks with her bare hands." The second guard made a dismissive noise. "Humans are weak, primitive. They only joined the galactic community 20 years ago. Cracks was a war veteran, 3 combat tours against the Zelnaga, and she took him down without a weapon. Their voices faded as they moved down the corridor. Catherine waited another 30 seconds before continuing her journey. She reached the lift shaft and forced the doors open just enough to slip through. Instead of calling the lift, which would alert security, she gripped the maintenance ladder on the side of the shaft and began climbing. 5 levels up, her arms burning from the effort. Catherine paused by the level 5 doors, listening carefully. No sounds from the other side. She forced these doors open as well and slipped into a dimly lit corridor. The intelligence archive would be heavily guarded under normal circumstances, but the diversion had drawn most of the security personnel away. Still, Catherine moved with caution, staying close to the walls. As she approached the archive entrance, she saw a single guard stationed at the door. He looked nervous, probably wondering why he had been left behind while his comrades responded to the alarm. Catherine needed a distraction. She reached into her boot and pulled out a small metal ball, another of Lieutenant Martinez's special devices. She rolled it down the corridor in the opposite direction. When it hit the wall, it emitted a loud bang and a flash of light. The guard immediately raised his weapon and moved to investigate the noise. As soon as his back was turned, Catherine struck. She wrapped her arm around his throat, cutting off both blood flow and air. The guard struggled briefly before losing consciousness. Catherine dragged him into a nearby storage closet and took his weapon and security pass. The archive door opened with a soft hiss when she swiped the pass. Inside, rows of data terminals glowed with soft blue light. Catherine moved to the central console and inserted the data chip Vexler had confiscated earlier, the one he thought was meant to steal information. In reality, it contained a specialized virus designed to bypass the hegemony's security systems. The console flickered as the virus did its work. Catherine quickly typed in search parameters: Human Integration Protocol and Earth Subjugation Timeline. The screen filled with classified documents. Catherine's expression remained neutral as she read, but her eyes hardened. The hegemony's plans for Earth were worse than they had suspected, not just control and resource extraction, but eventual sterilization of large portions of the human population to make room for hegemony colonists. And there was more, evidence of similar programs already implemented on 12 other worlds. Billions dead or enslaved, all covered up with carefully crafted stories about natural disasters or civil wars. Catherine copied the files to the data chip. This was the evidence Earth's ambassador would need to bring before the Galactic Council, but she wasn't done yet. She searched again. Project Nightfall. The system hesitated, then requested higher security clearance. Catherine plugged in a second device from her jumpsuit lining. This one contained the copied biological signature of a high-ranking hegemony official, stolen months ago during a different mission. The system accepted the credentials. What Catherine saw confirmed her worst fears. Project Nightfall was a planet-killer weapon designed to trigger catastrophic tectonic activity, and Earth was the test target. Scheduled deployment, 3 weeks from now. Catherine downloaded everything. The evidence was damning, but she knew how the hegemony operated. They would deny everything, claim the evidence was fabricated. She needed something more concrete, and she needed to stop Project Nightfall immediately. According to the files, the weapon was being assembled in a hidden facility on Centauri Prime's moon. Catherine memorized the coordinates. That would be her next destination, but first she had unfinished business here. As she was about to leave, the terminal flashed with an incoming security alert. Catherine watched as camera feeds showed Chief Interrogator Nala returning to the interrogation room, discovering her prisoner missing and ordering a complete lockdown of the facility. Catherine smiled slightly. The hunt was now going both ways. She left the archive and made her way toward the weapons storage area. If she was going to reach the command center, she would need more than a single guard's pulse rifle. The corridors were becoming more active as guards responded to the new alert about her escape. Catherine rounded a corner and came face to face with 3 hegemony soldiers. They raised their weapons immediately. "Halt, human!" one shouted. Catherine didn't halt. She moved. The guards fired, but Catherine was already diving forward, rolling beneath their aim. She came up inside their formation and struck with precise efficiency. A hard blow to the throat of the first guard, a sweep of the legs of the second, followed by a strike to the temple as he fell. The third managed to swing his weapon toward her, but Catherine caught his arm and twisted. The sound of breaking bone was followed by a howl of pain that she silenced with a quick punch to the jaw. All three guards lay unconscious in less than 10 seconds. Catherine collected their weapons and communication devices. She activated one of the comms and listened to the frantic chatter. Every available soldier was being ordered to find the escaped human prisoner. Catherine heard Nala's voice tight with anger, ordering shoot-to-kill authorization. Good. Let them hunt her. It would keep them distracted from what she was really doing. Catherine checked her stolen timepiece. The diversion in Sector 7 would end soon. Her team would be extracting, believing their mission complete, creating a distraction so that another team could infiltrate the facility. They didn't know that there was no other team. There was only Catherine. They also didn't know what Catherine had discovered about Project Nightfall. If she contacted them now, they would insist on following protocol, reporting back to Earth Command before taking action. But in 3 weeks, Earth might be reduced to molten rock. Catherine made her decision. She would continue alone. Somewhere, deep in the facility, an announcement echoed through the corridors. All personnel be advised. Human prisoner is considered extremely dangerous. Approach with caution and lethal force authorized. Catherine checked her weapons and moved toward the nearest exit point. Her mission had just changed. No longer merely intelligence gathering, but sabotage and elimination. The legend of Baba Yaga was about to grow. The hangar bay was in chaos. Alarms blared as soldiers rushed to their ships. Catherine watched from her hiding spot behind a stack of fuel containers. She needed a way off Centauri Prime and to the moon base where Project Nightfall was being assembled. All units prepare for immediate deployment, a voice shouted over the speaker system. The human prisoner has been spotted in Section 12, Convergence Pattern Alpha. Catherine smiled. Section 12 was on the opposite side of the facility. Someone had triggered one of her decoys, small devices that emitted human life signs, another invention from Martinez. A sleek scout ship sat at the edge of the hangar. Small, fast, and lightly armed, perfect for her needs. 2 mechanics worked on its open engine panel while a pilot checked systems in the cockpit. Catherine needed to time this perfectly. She counted down as a squadron of troops ran past her hiding spot, heading toward the false alarm. When they were gone, she moved quickly across the hangar, staying low behind various crates and vehicles. The mechanics were focused on their work, arguing about a power coupling. Catherine slipped past them and approached the ship from the blind side. The pilot was still in the cockpit running pre-flight checks. Catherine climbed up the access ladder on the ship's far side, out of the pilot's view. She waited until one of the mechanics called out to the pilot, drawing his attention. When he looked away from the entry hatch, Catherine moved. She slipped inside the ship and pressed herself against the wall of the narrow corridor leading to the cockpit. The pilot, a young hegemony officer with green-tinged skin, turned back to his controls. He never saw Catherine coming. She struck, quickly. A precise blow to the back of his neck that rendered him unconscious but left no permanent damage. Catherine lowered him gently to the floor. Unlike many in the hegemony, this pilot was just doing his job. No need for lethal force. She dragged him to a storage compartment and secured him inside with a med kit nearby. He would wake with a headache, but otherwise unharmed. Catherine took the pilot's seat and quickly familiarized herself with the controls. Similar to other hegemony ships she had trained on, the mechanics were still arguing outside, unaware of the change in personnel. "Control, this is Scout 7, Catherine said, perfectly mimicking the clipped tones of hegemony military speech. "Request immediate clearance for patrol sweep of Sector 9. The comm crackled. "Scout 7, clearance granted. Hangar door 3. Opening now." The huge hangar doors began to slide apart. The mechanics finally noticed movement in the cockpit and approached the ship. "Hey, pre-flight checks aren't complete," one called. Catherine powered up the engines. The mechanic stepped back as the thrusters hummed to life. One reached for his comm unit, suspicion dawning on his face. Too late. Catherine pushed the throttle forward, and the scout ship shot out of the hangar. Behind her, she heard the frantic alert being raised, but she was already banking the ship toward the upper atmosphere, pushing the engines to maximum. Scout 7, return to base immediately, Control demanded over the comm. Authentication code required. Catherine ignored them and continued her ascent. The ship shuddered as Centauri Prime's orbital defense turrets attempted to lock on. She jinked left, then right, using the evasive patterns she had studied in Earth's combat simulators. 2 hegemony fighters appeared on her scanner, launching from a different hangar. They were faster than her scout ship, but she had a head start. Catherine pushed the small craft harder, feeling the frame protest as she exceeded safety parameters. The moon grew larger in her view screen. Catherine calculated trajectories in her head. The fighters would intercept her before she reached the moon unless she did something unexpected. Catherine cut her engine suddenly and spun the ship 180 degrees. The pursuing fighters overshot her position, unable to match her maneuver at their speed. As they passed, she targeted their engine exhausts with the scout ship's light weapons. Not enough to destroy them, but sufficient to damage their propulsion systems. Both fighters began to tumble, their pilots fighting for control. Catherine reactivated her engines and continued toward the moon, but now on a different vector, approaching from the dark side, away from the main hegemony base. According to the files she had stolen, Project Nightfall was housed in a facility built into the Tycho crater. Catherine set her course and prepared for a silent approach. No communications, minimal power signature. She would glide in using the moon's gravity. As she approached the dark side of the moon, Catherine switched to manual controls. The scout ship skimmed just above the cratered surface, using the terrain to mask its approach. Her scanner detected a hidden installation built into the crater wall, exactly where the file said it would be. No obvious landing pads or entrances. The facility was designed to be invisible from orbit, but the documents had mentioned service tunnels for supply deliveries. Catherine located a small artificial cave cut into the crater wall. It was barely large enough for her ship, but it would have to do. She eased the scout ship inside and powered down completely. Emergency lights provided minimal illumination as she donned a lightweight environmental suit from the ship's storage. The suit wasn't military grade, but it would protect her from the moon's harsh conditions. Catherine checked her weapons. 2 pulse rifles taken from the guards, and a small blade hidden in her boot. Not ideal for what she was about to face, but she had worked with less. She exited the ship and studied the service tunnel. Signs of recent use. Dust patterns disturbed by supply crates being moved. She followed the tunnel deeper into the facility, moving silently despite the low gravity. After several hundred meters, she encountered her first obstacle, a security door with a biometric scanner. Catherine reached into her suit pocket and retrieved the biological signature device she had used in the archive. It might work here as well, but there was a risk the system would detect the forgery and trigger an alarm. No choice. She pressed the device against the scanner and held her breath. The panel flashed green. The door slid open. Beyond was a large storage area filled with crates and equipment. 2 guards patrolled between the rows, their backs currently to the door. Catherine slipped inside and took cover behind a large container. She needed to find the central control room. According to the stolen files, Project Nightfall was a series of devices that would be deployed into Earth's crust at strategic points around the planet. But the devices would be useless without the control module that synchronized them. Catherine moved through the storage area, avoiding the guards. At the far end was another door marked Authorized Personnel Only in Hegemony script. That had to be it. As she approached the door, it suddenly slid open. Catherine barely had time to duck behind a stack of crates as several scientists exited, talking excitedly in the clicking language of the hegemony elite. The final calibrations are complete, one said in the common tongue, presumably for the benefit of a different alien species in their group. Project Nightfall will be ready for deployment in 2 standard days, not 3 weeks as scheduled. Catherine felt ice in her veins. The timeline had been accelerated. Earth had no idea what was coming, and now it was coming sooner than anyone had anticipated. The scientists continued down the corridor. Catherine waited until they were gone before approaching the door they had exited. It required another security scan, which her device once again bypassed. The room beyond stole her breath. A massive spherical device hung suspended in the center, surrounded by smaller satellite units. The main sphere pulsed with an eerie blue light, while technicians worked at control stations around its perimeter. Catherine recognized the technology from the stolen files. The central sphere was the control unit. The satellites were the delivery devices that would be buried in Earth's crust. Once activated, they would generate harmonic frequencies that would shatter tectonic plates, tearing the planet apart from the inside, and it was nearly ready for deployment. Catherine assessed the situation quickly. Too many personnel to take on directly. She needed a different approach. Her gaze fell on a maintenance access panel near the floor. Ventilation system, most likely. She retreated from the door and found a secluded corner of the storage area. Time to call for backup, protocol be damned. Catherine activated the emergency transmitter hidden in her boot heel. "This is Operative Monroe," she whispered. "Authorization code Sierra Echo 79 Whiskey. Project Nightfall is real and deployment accelerated to 48 hours. Request immediate strike team. Sending coordinates now." Catherine knew the message might not get through the moon's interference, and even if it did, a strike team might not arrive in time. She was on her own, at least for now. She returned to the ventilation panel and removed it carefully. As she suspected, it connected to the main chamber. Catherine squeezed into the narrow passage and began crawling toward the heart of Project Nightfall. Time to show the hegemony why humans were the most dangerous species they had ever encountered. The ventilation shaft was cramped and dark. Catherine crawled forward inch by inch, careful not to make any noise that might alert the technicians below. Dust tickled her nose, but she suppressed the urge to sneeze. Years of training had taught her to control even the most basic bodily reflexes. Through small vents along the shaft, she could see glimpses of Project Nightfall. The central control sphere pulsed with unnatural blue light, casting eerie shadows across the faces of the hegemony scientists. Catherine counted 12 technicians and 4 armed guards. Not impossible odds, but a direct confrontation would be risky. She needed to understand exactly what she was dealing with. Catherine paused at a vent directly above one of the control stations. Below, a scientist with 6-fingered hands typed rapidly on a holographic interface. Catherine watched the alien's movements, memorizing access codes and command sequences. "The scientist spoke to a colleague. "Final targeting coordinates for Earth have been uploaded. The devices will target these fault lines simultaneously." A map of Earth appeared on the screen, with red dots marking the locations. Catherine's jaw tightened. They had identified Earth's most vulnerable tectonic boundaries. When the devices activated, they would create artificial earthquakes of impossible magnitude. Billions would die within hours. She continued through the ventilation system until she reached a junction above what appeared to be the main power control station. This was where she could do the most damage. Catherine carefully loosened the vent cover, preparing to drop down when the room cleared of personnel. A door slid open below, and Catherine froze. A familiar figure entered the room. High Commander Vexler himself, flanked by 2 heavily armored guards. Following behind him was Chief Interrogator Nala, her yellow eyes scanning the room with suspicious intensity. "Show me our progress," Vexler demanded. A nervous scientist approached. "The system is fully operational, Commander. We can deploy at your command." "Excellent," Vexler said. "The Council grows impatient with the human problem. Their resistance to proper integration exceeds acceptable parameters." Nala stepped forward. "Has there been any word on the escaped prisoner?" Catherine tensed. They were talking about her. "Nothing yet," one of the guards replied, "but additional security forces have been deployed to protect this facility." Vexler dismissed the concern with a wave of his 4-fingered hand. "One human is irrelevant. Even if by some miracle she managed to reach this base, what could she possibly do against our finest troops?" Nala wasn't so confident. I interrogated her briefly. There was something unusual about her. She showed no fear. All humans show fear eventually, Vexilor said. It is their defining characteristic as a species. Fear is why they will never be equals in the hegemony. Catherine allowed herself a small smile. Their underestimation of humanity was her greatest advantage. The commander moved toward the exit. Begin final preparations. I want the deployment vessels ready by the next cycle. I will inform the council that our timeline has been accelerated. After Vexilor and his entourage left, the room below became less crowded. Scientists moved to different stations, leaving the power control briefly unattended. Catherine seized her opportunity. She removed the vent cover completely and dropped silently to the floor, landing in a crouch behind a large equipment rack. The nearest technician had his back to her, focused on calibrating one of the smaller deployment devices. Catherine moved forward like a shadow and rendered him unconscious with a quick strike to the pressure point on his neck. She dragged his body behind the equipment rack and took his lab coat and identification badge. Disguise in place, Catherine moved casually to the power control station. She kept her head down, knowing that to the hegemony most humans looked similar enough that a quick glance wouldn't raise alarms. She began typing on the control panel, using the command sequences she had memorized. First, she needed to access the deployment protocol. The system requested an authorization code. Catherine hesitated, then entered the sequence she had seen the six-fingered scientist use earlier. The screen flashed green. Access granted. She navigated through the system looking for weaknesses. The entire project was built with redundancies. Shutting down the power wouldn't be enough. There were backup systems. She needed something more permanent. Catherine found what she was looking for, the targeting system. If she could corrupt the coordinates, the devices would deploy to harmless locations. But as she began to alter the data, an alarm suddenly blared. Security breach detected. Unauthorized access at Station 7. Catherine looked up. Every eye in the room turned toward her. For a moment, nobody moved, the scientists too shocked to see a human at the controls of their doomsday weapon. Then chaos erupted. Guards raised their weapons. Scientists scrambled for cover. Catherine dove behind the control panel as pulse fire scorched the air where she had been standing. Intruder alert! Human infiltrator in the main chamber, a voice shouted over the comm system. Catherine drew her stolen pulse rifle and fired at the room's main lighting panel. The chamber plunged into darkness, the only illumination coming from the blue glow of the central sphere and emergency lights that automatically activated. Using the confusion to her advantage, Catherine moved quickly between equipment racks, taking down guards with precise shots, non-lethal when possible, disabling weapons and hitting limbs rather than torsos. A security door slid open, and more troops poured in. Catherine needed a diversion. She spotted oxygen tanks used for specialized equipment maintenance. One well-placed shot, and the explosion rocked the chamber. Not enough to damage the main structure, but sufficient to create smoke and confusion. Catherine used the chaos to reach the central control sphere. The main technician was still there, frantically trying to secure the system. He looked up in terror as Catherine appeared from the smoke. "Please, don't kill me," he begged in the common tongue. "I need command access to the central core," Catherine said calmly, aiming her weapon at him. His hands shook as he entered his access code. "The hegemony will hunt you across the galaxy for this," he warned. "They already are," Catherine replied. With access granted, Catherine quickly began reprogramming the deployment sequence. She couldn't stop the countdown. It was too deeply embedded in the system. But she could change the targets. Instead of Earth's tectonic plates, she redirected the devices to deploy into Centauri Prime's uninhabited northern ice cap. The damage would be significant, but contained to an unpopulated area. A warning shot rather than planetary destruction. As Catherine worked, more security forces surrounded the chamber. She could hear them preparing for a full assault. Time was running out. She completed the targeting change and locked it with an Earth military encryption code. It would take the hegemony days to break it, by which time the devices would have already deployed to their new targets. Now for her escape. Catherine looked up at the ventilation shaft she had used to enter, but it was now covered by guards. All doors were blocked. She needed another way out. Her gaze fell on the deployment tubes, the launch systems designed to send the devices to Earth. Each was essentially a small escape pod, meant to deliver its payload and then self-destruct. If she could override that final command, Catherine rushed to the nearest tube as pulse fire erupted around her. A shot grazed her arm, burning through her stolen lab coat. She ignored the pain and began reconfiguring the pod's programming. "Seal all exits," came Nala's voice over the comm. "The human must not escape." The pod's hatch opened. Catherine climbed inside, continuing to type commands on the internal console. Security forces converged on her position. "Deploy all units now," Catherine heard Vexler command. "Even if some go to the wrong locations, we can still damage Earth significantly." That was her cue. Catherine sealed the pod and activated the launch sequence. The countdown began. 10 seconds to deployment. Guards reached the pod and began trying to force the hatch open. Through the small viewport, Catherine locked eyes with Chief Interrogator Nala, who had pushed to the front of the guards. "What have you done?" Nala demanded, her voice muffled by the pod's hull. Catherine allowed herself a rare, cold smile. "Taught you to fear." The pod shot into the launch tube, accelerating rapidly. Behind her, Catherine knew the other pods were launching as well, all headed for Centauri Prime's ice cap instead of Earth, thanks to her reprogramming. As her pod broke free of the moon's gravity, Catherine made one final adjustment, changing its trajectory away from Centauri Prime and toward the edge of the system. If her calculations were correct, she would intercept the emergency extraction ship that was hopefully responding to her earlier message. A warning light flashed on the faux console. The pod's self-destruct sequence had activated automatically. Catherine had less than 5 minutes to override it completely or be vaporized in space. She worked feverishly, bypassing security protocols and disabling failsafes. The timer continued, its countdown. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. With 30 seconds remaining, the final override accepted her command. The self-destruct sequence deactivated. Catherine exhaled slowly and looked out the viewport at the stars. Her mission wasn't complete. She had prevented Earth's immediate destruction, but the hegemony would try again. And now they knew what one human was capable of. The escape pod drifted through the darkness of space. Inside, Catherine worked to extend the pod's life support systems. Designed only for short deployments, the small vessel had limited oxygen and power. She had already disabled all non-essential systems to conserve energy. A small view screen showed the magnificent spiral of the Centauri system behind her. In the distance, a bright flash illuminated the northern region of Centauri Prime. The Project Nightfall devices had deployed as she had programmed them, striking the uninhabited ice cap. The explosion was massive but controlled, a warning rather than an extinction event. Catherine checked her emergency beacon again, still transmitting but no response. Her team might not have received her earlier message, or Earth Command might have ordered them to abort the mission once they lost contact with her. Either way, she was on her own for now. The pod's sensors suddenly beeped. Something was approaching, a ship, much larger than her tiny vessel. Catherine tensed and readied the small pulse rifle she had brought aboard. If the hegemony had tracked her, she would not be taken alive. The ship grew closer, its hull reflecting the distant starlight. It wasn't a hegemony design. Catherine's eyes widened as she recognized the sleek lines of an Earth Alliance stealth cruiser, one of the newest ships in humanity's small but growing fleet. Someone had received her message after all. The cruiser moved into position above. Her pod, a tractor beam engaged, gently pulling her vessel toward an open hangar bay. Catherine relaxed slightly but kept her weapon ready. Verification protocols would need to be followed before she could trust that these were indeed her people. The pod settled onto the hangar floor with a soft thud. Catherine waited as the atmosphere stabilized around her. A team in Earth Alliance. Combat armor approached, weapons drawn but not aimed directly at her. "Identify yourself," came a voice over the external comm. "Lieutenant Catherine Monroe, Earth Defense Force, service number 77305, Catherine replied. Request authentication code. Authentication Bravo Echo 94 Delta, the leader of the team responded. The correct response. Catherine unlocked the pod's hatch and climbed out, her legs stiff from hours in the cramped space. The team leader removed his helmet, revealing the face of Captain Sam Collins, her handler and the only person besides the highest levels of Earth Command who knew her true identity. You look like hell, Monroe, Collins said with a small smile. Nice to see you too, sir, Catherine replied. Mission accomplished. Collins nodded. We saw the explosion on Centauri Prime. The hegemony is in chaos. Their communication channels are filled with confused chatter about weapon malfunctions and human infiltrators. Project Nightfall has been neutralized, Catherine confirmed. But we have a bigger problem. The timeline for Earth's destruction was accelerated, and based on what I saw, this won't be their last attempt. Briefing room, 5 minutes, Collins ordered. The Admiral will want to hear this firsthand. As they walked through the ship, crew members stopped and stared at Catherine. Word had spread quickly about what she had accomplished. Infiltrating a top-secret hegemony facility alone and redirecting a doomsday weapon. To most of them, she was just Lieutenant Monroe, a skilled operative who had pulled off an impossible mission. Only a few knew her other name. In the briefing room, Admiral William Carter waited. A stern man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles, he rose when Catherine entered. Lieutenant, he said simply, but the respect in his voice was clear. Humanity owes you a debt we can never repay. Catherine remained professional. Just doing my job, sir. Your job was intelligence gathering, Carter pointed out. Not single-handedly preventing planetary genocide. Parameters changed. I adapted. Carter smiled slightly. That you did. He gestured to a seat. Now tell me everything. Catherine provided a detailed report. The discovery of Project Nightfall, the accelerated timeline, the hegemony's plans for other worlds. She handed over the data chip containing the evidence she had stolen. This confirms what we've suspected, Carter said grimly after reviewing the files. The hegemony has no intention of peaceful coexistence with humanity or any species they consider inferior. What's our next move, sir? Collins asked. Carter's expression hardened. Diplomatic channels are clearly insufficient. We need to build alliances with other subjugated species. Many will be hesitant after seeing what happened to the Praxians when they resisted, but this evidence might convince them. And if diplomacy fails? Catherine asked quietly. Then we prepare for war, Carter said simply. A war we cannot win through conventional means. Catherine understood. Earth's military was no match for the hegemony's vast fleets and advanced technology, but humans had something the hegemony didn't fully comprehend: resourcefulness born from thousands of years of conflict with each other. Humans knew how to fight against superior forces and win. There's something else you should know, Catherine said. High Commander Vexler was personally overseeing Project Nightfall. This wasn't a rogue operation. It came from the highest levels of the hegemony government. Carter nodded slowly. Then Vexler is now our primary target. Sir, Catherine said and request permission to lead the operation. Collins looked surprised. Monroe, you just got back from a suicide mission. Protocol dictates minimum 30 days recovery before. Granted, Carter interrupted, but not yet. First, we need to spread what you've discovered to our allies and potential allies. The hegemony will be hunting you specifically now. They'll analyze every aspect of how you infiltrated their facility and shut down those vulnerabilities. They think they were dealing with a typical human soldier, Catherine said. They still don't understand what they're facing. Carter studied her carefully. No, they don't understand what Baba Yaga is capable of, and that's our advantage. Catherine nodded. The name had started as a joke among her fellow operatives years ago. She had eliminated a particularly brutal alien warlord who had been capturing and experimenting on humans. The operation had been so clean, so untraceable, that rumors spread of a mythical assassin. Someone had remembered the old Earth legend, of Baba Yaga, the witch who lived in a house with chicken legs and punished the wicked. The name stuck, becoming a whispered legend among Earth's enemies. Few connected the myth to the unremarkable woman with forgettable features who could blend into any crowd. We have 2 weeks before the hegemony recovers from this setback, Carter continued. 2 weeks to build our coalition and prepare our response. Lieutenant Monroe will assist with tactical planning and training special operatives in hegemony infiltration techniques. And after 2 weeks? Catherine asked. Carter's eyes were cold. After 2 weeks, Baba Yaga goes hunting, Adichi. Meeting concluded and Catherine headed to her assigned quarters. She needed rest, though she knew sleep would not come easily. Too many images from the mission still played in her mind. The faces of the guards she had been forced to eliminate. The terror in the scientists' eyes when they realized what she had done. Catherine had no regrets. Every action had been necessary to protect Earth and potentially billions of lives across the galaxy. The hegemony had made their choice when they decided that other species were expendable. As she lay on her bunk, Catherine thought about what would come next. The hegemony would be expecting conventional warfare. Ships, soldiers, frontal assaults. They wouldn't be prepared for what humanity was about to unleash. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. It was Collins. Thought you might want to see this, he said, handing her a datapad. It's being broadcast across all hegemony channels and has leaked to independent networks throughout the galaxy. Catherine sat up and viewed the recording. It showed High Commander Vexler addressing the Galactic Council, his normally composed demeanor replaced by barely controlled rage. The terrorist attack on Centauri Prime was the work of human infiltrators, he declared. This unprovoked act of aggression cannot stand. The hegemony hereby declares all humans to be enemies of galactic peace. Any world harboring humans will face severe consequences. A council member off-screen asked a question. Vexelor's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of extreme stress in his species. No, we have not identified the specific operative responsible for the attack, he admitted, but we will find this criminal and make an example of. The transmission suddenly cut to security footage from the Nightfall facility. Catherine saw herself moving through the shadows, disabling guards with efficient precision, reprogramming the weapon. The footage ended with her final confrontation with Nala before the pod launched. They're calling you the human ghost in official channels, Collins said. But in the underground networks they're using a different name. Your reputation has spread. Catherine handed the pad back to Collins. Good, she said quietly. Let them fear the name. Let them look for ghosts in every shadow. Let them waste resources searching for a myth. Collins smiled grimly. And the reality? Catherine stood, her unremarkable features masking the determination beneath. The reality is preparing for war. As Collins left, Catherine turned to the small viewport in her quarters. Earth would be visible soon as the ship adjusted its course for home. She had bought her planet time. Not victory, not peace, but time to prepare for the coming conflict.